And we're on. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next interview here with Derek Rogers from Arneeon Media. I am going to be on the line here with Kyle Roof. You can see him on the screen there. I'm just going to switch to a different camera view. Forgive me for looking down all the time. Anyways, Kyle Roof I met actually at the White Hat versus Black Hat conference in Victoria last year, and he's just a really intelligent, smart guy. I'm building you up there, Kyle.
Thank you.
You've done a lot with SEO Intelligence Agency. When you presented some of that. I think you actually presented a little bit on AdWords stuff too, I believe, or maybe not. But
yeah, there's a kind of the intersection between AdWords and SEO.
Yeah, which is my day job is full-time PPC specialist, so that's something I'm intrigued with. I'm just going to turn down my other speaker here. Kyle Roof, you're hailing right now from Phoenix, Arizona.
That's right.
You work with SEO Intelligence Agency, and you're also with High Voltage SEO. And is there any other companies that I'm missing in the mix there?
There's always a few side projects here and there, but those are the big ones.
Of course. By the way, people, anybody watching right now, you can ask questions throughout the presentation. We're going to allow those questions, just ask them, because the questions actually come through live to us in real time. If I ask you to ask at the end, it gets delayed with the video so that you see me telling you to ask questions, and it's 20 seconds later before you actually answer them. So just feel free to ask questions throughout the interview here with Kyle, and we'll go from there. So Kyle, I have a couple questions for you. In your analysis, you do, maybe I'll let you just explain what you do first, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Most of my work is testing based, meaning I decided not to test client sites and see if things would work, but to put things into test environments to see if we could figure out what is or is not a ranking factor. That's kind of where a lot of my SEO knowledge came from initially, was actually just running single variable SEO tests. As a result, that then grew into SIA, which is a testing group where people can join if they like, but I publish maybe 7 tests a month. And again, we're trying to identify, is this a ranking factor? Is it not a ranking factor? What is a stronger factor or a less strong factor? That's kind of the main bulk of the test. And so taking those concepts, then I have my agency, where I present that as kind of our value prop, that if you come and use us as our agency, what you are getting are the results of our tests. This is the test that I've run. This is why we're doing it. So we're not basing things because we read a blog post in Moz or Ahrefs or wherever. We're basing this off of things that we've tested and we know that they work, and this is why we're doing it. A lot of the other stuff that I do too is also data driven. I'm trying to make as many decisions that are based on math and science rather than hope and trust and prayer, which I think is where most SEOs sit, is in that hope, trust, and prayer part. But no, those are the decisions that we try to make. So that's kind of my mentality to how I approach things. If I can, where a client has a question that I don't know the answer to, if I can, I'll try to run a test right then and there. Especially if it's a unique situation, because that happens all the time. A client will ask you a question, you just don't know the answer to it. What I can always bring to the table is say, like, I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question, but we can set up this test and we can figure it out. And then you are the only ones that know the answer, and you will have a competitive edge against all your competitors. The other thing I'd tell people too is that, like if you're in a meeting with a client and you're trying to close them, or a potential client, something that's always great is to bring up tests that you're currently running and talk about that and how they might apply to what their situation or kind of the issues that they have brought up kind of pre that meeting. Because then you can say, I know you might be talking to other agencies. I'd be interested, make sure you ask them what tests they're running and if they can show some current examples. because they can't. nobody else is doing it. So if you're actually doing that, if you've got some tests in your back pocket and you're running maybe just one test a month or a couple a quarter, that still gives you such a huge leg up, not only in the knowledge you're going to get, but then also that you can present something that's real. You can say like, actually, I run these tests. This is what I'm running. Or I'm in a group like Derek's group, or I'm in a group like Josh's group or my group, that kind of thing, where you get information that isn't just opinion. It's not a flame war. I think this. No, you're stupid. It's that. It's like, hey, what does everybody think about this? And then people can present actual things. So like Derek, people in your group, the advantage that they have is that the people that gravitate towards you are people that gravitate towards getting actual knowledge, not just opinion. So like those are the kind of things. Then that's kind of my framework and where I try to get in and out of when I'm working with clients and potential clients. Like, this is test driven, this is data driven, this is math driven, this is science.
Excellent. Yeah. I really like that you take that scientific approach, and you're not just guessing. It's the same thing. I interviewed Ted last week before, with his software, Cora software, and he just talked about the correlation factors, and he's just analyzing what's there right now. You, on the other hand, from my understanding, you'll set up 5 sites or 3 sites, let's say, from scratch, all exactly identical. I'm not sure if you use the same domains or not for them. I think you initially do.
It depends on what you're testing, but if you use one domain, if you can, it eliminates variables. The goal is to eliminate as many variables as possible. So something that's been done to one domain, then that variable is eliminated because it's been done to all of those pages.
Yeah, so you're primarily testing on-page factors and seeing what actually ranks. So you'll maybe only make an adjustment on the second website and then see what happens.
That's right. So like one site becomes your test site and the others are your control. So the test site has that one thing that's done to it. And then if you get movement up, movement down, or no movement, then that is a factor, is a negative factor, or is not a factor. And then the idea is, though, that these tests can then be replicated multiple times. We try to run them at least 5 times. Ted probably showed you the coin flip.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that if something happens 5 times in a row, the chances of that actually happening are 3%, and statistically relevant is 5%. So if we can replicate something, and even though understanding that we can't get all variables controlled, but if we can control a lot of them, and we get something that happens, say 5 times out of 6, we're feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I've got a question for you.
Sure.
I've got several questions for you.
Is this one of your questions, or did this come in live?
This one is one of mine. I am not seeing anybody asking questions yet. There's a few people watching, but maybe they're just shy. That's fine. So one question I have is, I'm thinking it's Penguin, like the latest rollout of Penguin, that adjusted whether entire sites were penalized for certain functionality. Now you can actually be penalized per page, and you can correct issues, and then you don't have to wait for 6 months for things to get fixed on Google's side. But what I was wondering is, have you noticed since that and corresponding updates that there's less of a focus on keyword stuffing into URLs? So like exact match domains, of course, I think that's become less of a factor, but also adding slash like for local plumbers or something, you'll have a brand domain slash I'm in Nanaimo, so Nanaimo plumbers. And that the ranking value of that after the slash domain or keyword stuffing. Have you noticed any difference with that lately, with what's happening with Google and some of the changes in quality stuff that they're looking for? Or have you done any tests on that?
I've got the on-page factors clustered into groups of most important to least important, or most strong to least strong, if you will. And keyword in the URL is still in that top group. The top group would be your meta title, your H1 and body content, and in the URL. Those are still the top 4. So I could see that perhaps it may have shifted within that 4 maybe there's an argument to be made there. But in terms of it's in overall importance, it's still in group A, if you will, for signal strength.
Okay, so what you're saying is it's still a factor. It still pushes the needle up.
For sure.
That's cool. So another question would be IFTTT syndication. So I'm a white hat SEO, so I don't like, I used to run PBNs and do all the black hat type stuff.
You don't like building things in mass bulk?
No, and I don't like maintaining them, and then trying to maintain a false fake entity.
Well, that's actually where it gets expensive. It's easy to do once, but if you want to keep it going, that's where the cost lies.
Yeah, exactly. So, but more of a white hat IFTTT would be simply syndicating your own content to your own social and Web 2.0 platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So you syndicate it out, you have the IFTTT, if this, then that recipe with a link back to your main original article, and maybe it only posts 250 words from that article to each of the different socials. So it's sending back social signals to your site. Is that still valuable?
Sure. I think so. In the last year and a half or so, I've tested most of the major social platforms, and those links will pass juice. So there is value in at least getting that particular link. Is that the strongest link? Probably not. And there's got to be a point where there's diminishing returns. If you get one link from site A, and then the second link from site A, and the third link from site A, at some point Google, okay, the first link maybe has the most value, or you get the full weight of whatever the juice is passed. But as you continue to get links from the same domain, it's got to have some sort of drop off. So if this then that recipes, if you're posting this to the same 10 social profiles, my guess would be you get the first link counts as the most valuable from that, and social profile links are probably a lower tier in strength anyway, and then the second one and the third one and the fourth one. So at some point you're probably not getting any more value in terms of what you're trying to accomplish for link building, or for some sort of link strength, link signals coming in. Of course, if you can get real traffic from it, that obviously has a different benefit. But if kind of posting for the sake of posting for the backlink, I would imagine it's some sort of diminishing returns at some point. You get no value beyond whatever that cutoff is.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you are still seeing value in the sense that it is a social signal link back to your site.
I don't know if it's like a social signal, but I mean, I think it definitely counts as a backlink. I mean, you can move pages with just those links. The question might be like, does it kind of end at the domain? So you get something from, whatever.com. Does it end at the domain level so that it's counting so many from that particular domain? Or if you had all these individual pages, do those count?
Right.
And still carry that? That's where a good question might be. But
okay, good stuff.
I wouldn't consider it a social signal. I'd consider it a backlink.
Right. Yeah, I guess social signal would be more engagement on your social profiles.
Probably.
Okay, so the other question was regarding there's so many different ways to guest post. So you can go to hang on a sec here. I'm going to switch to that camera. So you can go to there's like a different news site that allows guest posting, and really it's kind of not really a mainline news site, but it has lots of articles on different topics, and you can post on there. One of them's Brew Waha, or however you pronounce that. There's a whole ton of them out there. I think iBuzz or something, or whatever. There's tons of them. Do you see any value in those types? Like, some of them have stronger trust flow and domain authority and that type of stuff. Whether they're sending follow links back based on what you write your article on, I'm not sure. Some of them do, some of them don't, I guess. But do you have any recommendations on that, or have you seen any good products with that?
So my personal opinion on that, so we have in our agency, we have somebody that her full-time job is guest posting and link outreach. That's what all she does all day, every day. And so we're still seeing a lot of benefit from that, and we still see ranking boosts. The thing that we try to avoid, though, are any sites that are on a list. I'm sure that in your own agency, you've gotten that list of dear sir or ma'am, and they list, the 50 sites that they have access to.
Yes.
Just in
Many
a
times.
in a common sense sort of way, that somebody at Google has gotten that email.
Yeah.
How hard is it for them just to copy and paste into something that says ignore? Is kind of my thought. That can't be very difficult to do. So like, when they're looking at how links are crunched, they can just copy and paste all those spam emails that they get, knowing that people are just buying spots on those sites, or at least it's extremely easy to do so, and just put it into an ignore category. So you're not going to get penalized for it. They just simply won't count it. That's completely my opinion and just my thought process on it. So what we do is we actually try to avoid any sites that are on any of those lists. And if a site is on those lists, then we stop building links from it.
Okay.
Because I've noticed, though, you get just as much value out of a site that has very little metrics, very few metrics, but somebody's clearly loving it, and investing in it, as you do a site that has great metrics. I don't see too much difference between those types of things. At least it's not overly noticeable when you're doing guest post outreach. This site's got a DA 30, this one's got a DA 15, but they're both loved and being used, and the value seems to be about the same for both of those.
True. Now, some of them are more they're actual news sites, or they claim to be. So that's more my specific question, because I know there are some good blogs out there that you can post on and they actually have value, but I'm just wondering if there are specific news sites that you've seen where it actually does push the needle in the right direction.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head that is news specific. Yeah, again, because that site is on everybody's list, I can get you into here.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
it's easy. So in my mind, that's what would discount it or disqualify it for me. Where I would just be like, it's probably not going to hurt you. Maybe there's some real traffic coming through there, so that's great. But I don't know if there's an overwhelming benefit in doing that.
Yeah,
That's pure opinion, though. That's not anything tested, or that's my opinion.
It sounds like a good educated guess. It's probably right on, but okay. So next question: AI, artificial intelligence searches, and home devices. So there's Google Home, there's Alexa, all these different devices coming out. People are just asking their phones for search results. They're asking their device for search results. My question is, first of all, what do you think about the influence on SEO strategy for that? And then a kind of a related question is, there are some people that are recommending adding terms like nearby or near me into their keywords in their on-page SEO work, so that it includes somebody asking, where's a local plumber, or what's the best plumber near me? In my view, that's not really how the geo-targeting or geo-analysis works for SEO. It doesn't care that you use the word near me. It's actually looking at your physical location when you do that search. But anyways, I just wanted to get your view on that, because you may have some insight there, or you've maybe done some testing on it.
I looked a little bit on how voice search might be getting getting that information that it's then spitting back out to you. I have a Google Home, and so I ran, I don't know, 60 different types of searches through it. My initial thought was that it was going to use the featured snippet, or the top answer part, but that wasn't consistent, especially if you got something that was more table based as an answer.
Right.
So I'm not entirely sure what they're using, and I also couldn't find too many examples on voice that were monetizable. I didn't get into, like, say, plumber near me too much, but a lot of questions that it worked best with, where I think people would go to and use it, are like, what's the weather like today? Or what's this times that, or how do you do these conversions? I don't know that I think most of those aren't really monetizable searches at the moment anyway.
Yeah.
So I wasn't overly concerned about those results. Now, when you're asking about the near me part of things, probably the thing that impacts the most would be the map pack. Last year, I did this great test where I was driving all around Phoenix, doing the same searches just from different locations throughout the entire city, staying in Phoenix proper. And the number one thing that influenced that was proximity.
Yeah.
So you would have things that would show up in the map pack that didn't even have websites. They didn't have verified Google My Business. It was just they were right there. So proximity to the search was the number one thing for that. But that was in the map pack.
Yes.
I could see an argument on organic results where stuffing near me would be advantageous for that particular search when somebody actually searches plumber near me. If you have a plumber near me page, I can see that affecting organic a lot more than it would probably ever help you in the map pack.
Yeah. You mentioned the asking the weather and those type of questions. It's interesting that Google just did that little experiment where they eliminated search results and just had, if you were asking a calculator question,
Right.
they would give you the calculated answer and no search results. And you had to actually click to see search results. Then they got rid of it because people were asking addresses and they looked like calculator
Right. Yeah.
calculations.
It was inconsistent enough that they couldn't quite hone it down. But what was interesting about that is I think this is Ted Kubaitis' concept. They weren't doing that for convenience of search, and they weren't necessarily even doing it for specific ad revenue, like only their ads would show. Because I don't think any ads were showing on that. But he was talking about every time a search is run, that costs them money. The processing power to do one search is expensive. When it's done in the aggregate of trillions, as their searches are. So if they can give you a result that only has one thing, and they did not have to crunch the algorithm and show you a full page of results, it actually probably saved them a lot of money, which was probably the goal on that. And so what I think they decided is that the savings and money weighed against the ad revenue that they could get didn't quite match up, and that's probably why they let it go. And then they could just do it under like, oh, there was kind of imperfect results, and so we just didn't like those very much. I think they would have been just fine with it if it actually would have saved them money. With the cost that they can get from the ad revenue for those searches versus the savings in the processing. I think that's what the decision was.
Yeah, I think that's correct. They also realize, like, they're always. I feel they honestly are in most cases trying to give the best results for people's searches, and in a lot of cases, at least with that, it wasn't exactly what
Sure.
people were meaning. So they were trying using their AI technology to figure out something, and it wasn't quite working right. But they'll get there. So a final question that I can ask is actually I've got two
No
questions.
problem. You said one, that's all you get.
Oh, dang. Why do I always say that? So mobile first indexing, and how it's working, how it's affecting the SERPs, whether you have a mobile based style site to go in conjunction with your existing one, or you're using AMP. I have some AMP, like I have an AMP plugin on my site and I'm using it. That seems to work okay in some cases, but I've also noticed that the exact content is not translated. So now I'm getting errors in Search Console that say, hey, there's a mismatch, which could actually be negatively affecting me now. But just what's your thoughts on the whole mobile first indexing and what Google's rolling out there?
So I have two thoughts. Thought number one is it's really a good idea to go into Search Console and you can pull out and compare mobile traffic versus desktop traffic. And you can also see your mobile rank versus your desktop rank.
Right. Yeah.
I think usually they're often within a couple positions of each other, but I have seen some that were significantly off. And that kind of either pro or con, like significantly higher in mobile or significantly lower. And then you can look and see what kind of mobile traffic you're getting. And I would guess that most sites are probably 60-40 mobile to desktop. So if your mobile results are significantly worse than your desktop, that is a clue that you might want to see what's going on your mobile version. To your point, it's entirely possible that however your mobile pages are being rendered are you're losing a lot of HTML or or a lot of content somewhere, and as a result, it's negatively affecting the rank that you should be getting. That work that you put into the desktop that's now being translated to mobile, you might be losing a lot of keywords, you might be losing a lot of content, you might be losing a lot of variations in LSI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera,
Yeah.
just in how the mobile is being generated. So you might want that's something to definitely look into, and that's I think where you can see a real problem might be arising. So that's kind of thought number one. Thought number two is I don't know if it's true or not. They've said mobile first index, but I don't know why we believe anything that they say. I personally don't, and that kind of goes to the testing idea. It's like, okay, I've heard that. That's great. I'm actually running tests right now to see if it's true.
Right.
And that's kind of how I would encourage everybody to look at that. Like you hear an announcement, Google says this, or it's announced on SEO Roundtable that, or Rand Fishkin said whatever. Okay, that's great. Perhaps it's true. Let's go find out. And so that's actually what I'm working on right now, our mobile first test to see if you display different content essentially between the desktop version and the mobile version, then ranking should change. So if you establish what the desktop rank is and then you give different mobile content, or you kind of trim things out, you should see movement. So that's what we're working on right now.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a shift towards mobile because there's just so many more mobile uses.
I think, in my personal opinion, is it's not because of that. The reason is that it's harder to spam. It's harder to spam your own mobile version of your pages because they usually trim out a lot of what can be spammed on a desktop version.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you there. I just mean in any sense, the search in general, there's a lot more mobile users. So Google's already totally streamlined search results to work within mobile devices,
Right.
make them more simpler to search, which is nice, but they're also stocking their AdWords above everything and making sure they've got their ad dollars coming in. So
it definitely takes a couple thumbs now to get to the organic results.
It does. Especially if you're using even on maps now with the pins that you can get and sponsored pins and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's excellent. I really appreciate that information. One thing I was going to suggest, or one thing that I'm interested in is, and I kind of mentioned this to you earlier, but because I'm a PPC specialist as well, I'm really seeing the algorithmic engineiness of the whole AdWords, Google AdWords, and how it responds to changes. And so I think it would be really cool to do some testing, and maybe you're already doing this, but in AdWords, and testing factors that help your rank within AdWords bids. We've noticed things, and I haven't done any testing on it, but I've just noticed things where you're running a campaign for a while, it's kind of matured, and it's plateaued, so it's kind of always consistently in the same average cost per click, and around the same numbers of conversions, or maybe it's fluctuating a little bit, and then you make a slight adjustment where you drop your daily budget spend, and suddenly it takes off. It's almost like Google, whoa, we'll help you get more leads. Let's get this campaign going. And you haven't really made any other changes except adjusting your budget down, which should negatively affect it. So I've seen weird things like that, and it'd be interesting to do some testings, maybe call it AEO, AdWords Engine Optimization.
The next speaker you get, or next person for an interview, should be Derek Booth. His PPC knowledge is second to none, and the things I've picked up from him have just been phenomenal in the PPC space. One thing he talks about that I like a lot is the rule of three. So you're always running 3 ads for a particular ad group.
Right.
At the end of the month, tweak the worst performing one. But what he talks about is just making that one change, so you get one fresh ad in. It jiggles the algorithm, and you actually get a slight bump up in performance. So he talks about constantly changing the worst performing ad of your ad groups will give you that ranking boost just by changing it. Probably the same concept from what you're seeing on just changing the campaign budget. It jiggles the algo, and so things that have plateaued then kind of get this bump, and you get kind of a quick jump up, if you
Yeah.
will, or kind of increase in action.
Yeah,
So same sort of concept.
we've noticed that we do that as well. Google actually recommends more ads. We typically do at least 3 per ad group, um, but definitely I've seen that, and I've also seen if you change a bid strategy. So if you're using like an enhanced cost per click strategy, where you can manually manipulate the average cost per click on every ad group, and then you switch to something like maximize conversions, um, you'll either get a spike upwards or downwards. It'll last for a little while, and then it'll level out again.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, just that happens. And what if you could game that a little bit? Like if you knew it was going to happen every time, you just change every 3 weeks or something, whatever it works out to. But it'd be interesting to see that. Okay, well, I am going to turn it over to you to present your latest trick.
Sure thing.
Your project,
So,
the
yeah,
Page Optimizer project.
the Page Optimizer. It's been a fun project. So, a little background: we were in beta last month for about 8 weeks, and we've transitioned from beta to kind of soft launch. So we're not really advertising this thing, but the idea is you need to work out kinks in taking money. So that's where we're at right now, and then just kind of getting more people into it, and people a little more serious about usage, going from hey, I'm using this for free to hey, I'm using this because I paid you some money. So that's kind of where we're at right now in the project. And what I thought I'd show is just this is what the tool is, this is what it does, and then I've got a sneak peek on we've got some stuff coming out. The other thing too is, Derek, you sent me over some potential client information, a target site, some target competitors, and keywords. And so what I also thought I might do is kind of walk through some of my thoughts on how I approach kind of starts of projects, if you will.
Yeah, that would be perfect. I've tried it out when it was in beta a little bit, and I just love the way it presents things that you actually know. So Cora is good for giving you the blah, here's everything. Yours is good for saying, no, here's 3 things right now that we know will affect this. I just really like the simplicity of it. So yeah, go ahead. There's no questions yet in the chat, so I'm sure there will be as we go through this.
So I think I clicked to share my screen. Is that right?
Yes, I don't see it yet.
Should be coming through.
Aha, there we go.
Great. So this is the page. So this is where you can get it, PageOptimizer.pro. You get 3 free runs just to try it out and see how you like it. And then the point, though, is something else is that we're pricing it where I want SEOs that are hustling, guys that are and gals that are trying to figure it out, content writers, freelance content writers, people that don't have huge budgets. So we're pricing it at $1 a run, so that you don't have to make a decision on like keeping Ahrefs or not. It's the kind of, and also when you think about SEO projects, the on-page stuff is usually at the beginning of the project or kind of for a short amount of time during a campaign. I didn't want people to have to worry about a monthly subscription. If you are going to use it a lot, we have a monthly option that's unlimited. But if not, it's $1 a run. And this is where you can get it from. What I wanted to talk about, though, and we'll show what the output looks like. But Derek, this is what you sent me. So serviceandedge.com as the target site. So that homepage is what we want to optimize for. And then 2 competitors, and then 2 kind of versions of a keyword: 3D laser scanning Vancouver and 3D scanning Vancouver. I find this is pretty typical. Like if you take on a client or you're kind of talking with a potential client, this is what they'll give you. They'll give you this. Yeah, we like our homepage. Here are 2 competitors, and then this is what we're trying to rank for. And one of the first questions is, are these actually your competitors? And are these the right keywords, or what's the right keyword? And so what I did is I ran the search a couple times. Excuse me while I grab this bar and try to move it.
Yeah, this is perfect. This is my client that I'm working with right now. That I've only I've done a few adjustments, and I've got him into Google Maps, and I've got analytics going. We've done some on-page stuff, and he's already starting to shoot up in ranks in different searches, which is great to see. But he's willing for us to review it online like this, so it's perfect.
Excellent. So I ran the two searches, and obviously I'm in Phoenix. I'm not in Vancouver, so my results might be a little bit different, but that's fine. It's illustrative purposes. So I noticed off the bat that two of the competitors that were given are, I've got them, it was 1 and 2 for 3D laser scanning, and a little bit different in this one, but they're still there. They're both top 10. Um, so just a thing at the outset, I often ask clients, have you identified competitors? Of course, I will do some of this research, but do you have people do you have identified? Go ahead and shoot those over to me. And I often find that they usually will identify sites that aren't on the first page. And that's because in real life, they're the competitors. They see them as real life competitors, but in an online space, they don't realize that your competitor is anybody that's sitting on page one. And really the goal is to try to find somebody on page one that you can knock off. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And whether that is actually somebody that is a true competitor or somebody that's just getting your keyword, it doesn't matter in terms of getting on to page one. So that's, I felt that was a good start, kind of identifying those two. Um, when you're looking at competitors in this SERP space, the first thing I like to look at are sites that are similar to mine to see, because sometimes you have industries where, like in the law space, you're not going to beat Avvo or FindLaw because you're probably not going to be able to create a directory page that looks like that. So you need to see if there are other law firm sites, and then those are the ones that I identify as my competitors. And when I crunch things, when I use my tool or when I use Quora, which are the two things that I do when I'm doing Onpage, I'm looking for competitors that I can then beat. So when people ask me like, who are my competitors or who should I be targeting, that's who I'm trying to target. Sites that I think I can beat, or sites that appear to be winning because they're on page, and sites that are similar to mine. Because you probably can't create a brand new site. So you have to see if you can take what you have and do it better than somebody that's got something similar is kind of the concept. So those two competitors are great. I would grab a few more, and this would kind of take a little bit of extra work. But kind of going through then on these particular sites that are showing up to see if any others are kind of the same thing. So this like underhill.ca, the client might say like, oh, they're complete garbage. They're a clown show, not anything I need to worry about. Well, yes, you do, because they're sitting in the number 2 spot. So that would kind of go into my evaluation. The other thing that I would look at as well is if you can identify, there might be sites that are winning not because of their on page.
Right.
It could be like YouTube, for example, is probably not winning because of their on page. So that's not anything I would put into like my on page evaluation, but sometimes you can identify a competitor that's got 8 billion backlinks. They've been online since 1944. They're not, they're not moving. So I usually don't worry about them. Like they're not the ones that you can compete with anyway. So that's not who we're trying to knock off. So
I've
then
been
I got
online since
1944.
Yeah.
Me too. What I mean? So like I would go through, and the ones that I would identify are the ones that, of course, that are above me, but then also the ones that look like they're winning because they're on page and they look like they're beatable, or they're looking like that I can go after them. So that's kind of all goes into my kind of evaluation on who my competitors are. The next thing is what's the right keyword? 3D laser scanning Vancouver or 3D scanning Vancouver, and you might look at it from a volume perspective. Like this one probably has more volume, would be my guess. But is it a better term? And here's what I do. So we've got this term. Scroll to the bottom of the page, and these are your related searches. And let's check out these. You've got 3D scanning services, another services one, a near me, services near me, company, photogrammetry, grammetry. There we go.
Grammetry, yeah.
That was a new word that I learned this afternoon. So that's there. And then a couple other kind of locations. If I go over and look at 3D scanning, there's not as much variation. It's scanning, you have the services again, but then locations, scanners. This to me seems like it's got more variety. So I call these a keyword cluster. So what I would do from here is I would actually grab not just the search volume for this, but I would grab the search volume for this cluster. And then I'd look at other things too. I'd look at the auto suggest that comes down for this term. I'd look at Google Trends, and I'd create a cluster. I'd see where my overlap is between these two terms. And then I would see if it's going in the right direction, because this one, and I don't know, you know better than I am, if winning Saskatoon means anything, or Winnipeg or
No,
Edmund, probably not. So
too far away.
just as a quick glance, it looks to me that this particular term, if I were to optimize for this as my top level phrase, I'm going to go in the wrong direction. You know, I'm going to go more location specific, not necessarily maybe service specific or things that those near me kind of concepts, which I might want.
Right.
And the other thing to understand is that if you properly optimize for a top level phrase, you can win these secondary phrases just by having them one time on the page, often as your H2s or H3s. So when I'm planning on writing out this page that I then want to optimize for this particular term, I start thinking about, can I do an H2 that's 3D scanning Saskatoon, or an H3 that's this Winnipeg, or can I do better with these ones down here? Probably these ones, you know, getting a near me in there, getting these services concepts. There's a company concept, the fun new term concept. Just as a quick glance and without doing any more research, I would lean towards this as my top level phrase. So that what that would mean is that I would be choosing this as this is basically going to go into that group A that I was talking about. I'm going to try really hard to get these in there. And that would be in my meta title, my H1, in the body content, and in the URL.
Right.
Now, because we're talking about the homepage, you can't get the URL, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That happens. That's really not a huge deal. Or it's not the be all to end all. But if I was an internal page, then I'd be making sure I'm doing .com/this.
Along those lines, what if you had an article that was at that address, you know, like a blog post on the site, specifically targeting that phrase or the concept?
What I'm going to do there is I'm going to link from that blog post to my homepage, or the page that I'm actively trying to optimize for it. I personally think it's a win if that gives me two opportunities to get that term, because now I have two different pages. Clients sometimes get a little upset about that, like, why is this blog post outranking our homepage? And I can often point to why that is, but then they may or may not want to correct it. Worst case, the blog post ranks for that term that we want, get some CRO going on that page, you know, get the converting points to get people either where you need them to be, or that they can actually become a lead or a sale or convert, whatever's a conversion point. Get that on your blog, because that's usually where the most heartburn comes from. It's like, hey, we're driving people to this page that can't convert, which that in and of itself is a huge problem. Why is it possible that somebody can be on your site and not convert?
Yeah.
So that's kind of almost like a different issue in my mind. I'm happy that we're ranking. You know, we're on page 1 for this term. Who cares what page is ranking? Let's get them to that page and let's convert them. So, but if you really had to, you could 301 the article page. You could try to do something with canonicals to the homepage.
That was going to be my question. Would be
those are other fixes. So you'd maybe take some of that content, put it on the homepage, and then canonical it over.
Yeah, exactly.
To the homepage. So those are things you can do. They don't always work though. That's actually super frustrating. I've done a lot of that. Where, you know, Google just loves that page for whatever reason. Optimize it, you know, or get it like CRO optimized.
Yes. Yeah.
But anyway, kind of getting to what we're talking about, I look at the cluster. I see what I look at the total search volume I'm looking at here, and then I'm also looking at how the degree of difficulty for these terms. How many people are going after this cluster, how strong they are, and then I weigh the clusters against each other. I'm going to guess that this cluster is probably less than the other cluster in terms of total volume, but these look to be more transactional. And again, this is my 5-second look at it, but I like these terms better. They look more transactional. They look a little bit broader. They don't look as location specific, where the other one seems a little bit too broad. It doesn't get me down the path that I want to go down.
I would agree with you on that. Yeah.
So that's kind of then I've got my top level phrase. At that point, then I want to look at how can I optimize for this? And I guess that's where my tool comes into play. Right now, if you go onto the site, we actually spit out you get an email, and the email is this sheet. And what it does is it pulls out, there's your target keyword, that 3D laser scanning Vancouver. That's the page you're trying to optimize. And these are your variations. For Quora, these are what Quora calls matches. Very, very, very similar concept. And you can see them there.
Another spreadsheet.
Yeah. So on the left-hand side, although you'll notice that mine goes that far.
Yes. It's not a matrix style pile of data.
So on the left-hand side is variations of your keywords. So optimizing for these terms right here. And then on this side is the exact match side. So that's optimizing for your target phrase as you have written it exactly. So 3D laser scanning Vancouver. is what's optimized over here. Now, whatever you put in exactly is all the tool will do. And it's something that, people need to understand. And I'm sure Ted talked about this. His tool is agnostic. My tool is agnostic. My tool isn't looking at the situation and going, well, I would normally advise this, but in this situation, because you're in this niche, I'm going to advise that. That's not how these tools work. They are counting and number crunching. So all it can do is count what you have given it. In this situation, I just put those two competitors that you identified. You'd probably want to get more competitors in there. But depending on what you put in, are the results you're going to get, and then those are the recommendations you're going to get. So in this particular situation, what we've got is it's identifying 3 signals are under optimized and nothing seems over. The reason there, though, is that it looks like your competitors really aren't using that long tail phrase. 3D laser scanning Vancouver, at least for those 2, they're not actually using that, which is great. In those situations, if you get it into, we can't get into the URL because it's the homepage, but if we got it into the meta title and the H1, we'd probably win it, or at least start ranking.
Which is interesting because I think at least one of them is specifically in Vancouver, whereas we're on Vancouver Island, so my client's service area is 300 kilometers radius that includes Vancouver.
So this gives you an opportunity kind of right off the bat where you're going after a phrase that maybe people really aren't optimizing for. So if you just kind of get it into that group A area, I might do it. I would flirt with doing it one time in the body. That's in paragraph text. Although nobody's doing it, and the tool is going to recommend not doing that because you can get over optimized quickly. I would probably put it right here in my H1 as the tool suggesting, and the meta title as the tool suggesting. I might throw it one time in the body. But this is a mistake that people then make. That term that you want, you'll often see this with long tail phrases. You don't need to get it that many times on the page. You need to get it on very specifically, and then after that, you need to optimize for your variations, and these are all the variations. So they're close to what we're talking about, but they're not that exact phrase. That's where you need to kind of get in, and you would actually optimize more on the variation side.
And those variations, you're pulling those from the auto suggest?
No, these come from bolded terms in the SERPs.
Okay.
So Google has identified this as a variation of your term. That's what the tool pulls back. We do allow manual include exclude every once in a while, especially with non-English languages. Sometimes you'll see a preposition or an article flag, and you don't want to optimize to a preposition or article. So you can remove that. And every once in a while, you might know something, or there's something you really want to consider, like attorney for lawyer, for example. Right. And the tool might not pull that back, but it might be good to do. You can manually add those, and the tool then will crunch with that term specifically. But yeah, this is how it goes. The other thing I wanted to point out too, especially if you're at that beginning stage where you're like, okay, we need to write content, or we need to see if we've got the right thing. Tag totals is something that we look at. This is the total number of H1s on the page, the total number of H2s, H3s, H4s into all those different signal areas. It actually kind of gives you an idea of what your page should look like. Because when you're over here, it says H2s 26. Does that mean we need 26 H2s on the page? No. What that means is that within all of the H2 tags, they are using 26 different variations. That could be 3 tags with a lot of variations, like super long tags, or it could be several. And so we can actually pull it out and see that one competitor is, and again, these are only 2 sites we're going against, but one is using 7, the other is using 16 actual total H2s. So that's an interesting thing. So when you want to get into what Google is expecting to see on this page, this can then help you make those decisions.
Is that information coming from their homepage as well?
It's the page that you put in as your competitor page. That's what it's counting off of.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's going to give you a suggestion on how you might want to do your page. Okay. Do you have 2 H1s on that page? I didn't look at it.
I don't think so, but there might be a hidden.
Yeah, you might want to double check that.
Yeah.
But then it kind of pulls out even like, things like lists and videos and images, because then they can help you decide what kind of page you're trying to build or how you can give something that Google is expecting to see for this particular keyword phrase. So this is often where I start. When I work with my writers and we're creating content, I look and see, okay, we need the kind of page we're looking for is this type of page. So this is the kind of structure we need to get, and then we can start building content around that. The other thing I think I noticed is that your word count was a little light.
Yes.
Yeah, they've got like 657 is the average. You're at like 178, which I think in this particular example, against these two, we just found things that were under optimized. So that's kind of where then probably that under optimization is coming from. It's just your page isn't big enough.
I'm in the midst of producing an article for to help with that, because I definitely noticed that in the Quora analysis as well, is the content lacking just about in every way. So
Sure. Yeah, so that's kind of where I go. So what I would do is I'd actually go back through. I wouldn't base everything off this specifically because this is just the two competitors, but I'd grab kind of those ones from page one that look like they're making it happen, and then I would kind of, it's going to adjust the numbers a bit when you put in different competitors, but then that's how I give that a go.
Excellent. Good stuff.
And then, if you don't mind, this is kind of a sneak peek.
Ooh, I like sneak peeks.
So right now you put it in, you get an email file sent to you. We're doing away with that. So there's actually going to be a dashboard, and you can actually then keep track of everything. So by the way, BarkPost is just a random dog site that I use for my thing. So that's not a real client site, but so you can kind of do it by project, and then these are the pages then you're trying to optimize. So here's your Surface and Edge, and this is the home page. Oh, and I timed out.
Didn't show your password.
So so you kind of come in here, you can create a new project, and then these are the sites, the projects that we've got going on. And this is the one particular page. So as you were to add pages, then there more cards would fill in, and then it kind of tells you what's going on. So this is the over and the under, and you can click to view, and it takes that spreadsheet and just kind of puts it here into this sort of a view.
Well, that's really cool. So it's a visual interface.
Yeah, and it's easy to rerun. So you put the stuff in and you ran it that one time, but then I've got it set so it pre-populates so you can quickly rerun without having to copy and paste everything back in. And then there's a little summary page, and if you really need the report, you can click to download it.
So if somebody's rerunning on the same site, is that kind of counting against the number of sites that they have?
The reason you'd want to do that would be no, because it just stays within the same project.
Okay.
But after you've made tweaks, so okay, we see we need to tweak the H1 and the meta and whatever. After you make those tweaks, then you can rerun, and it'll archive your scores so you can kind of see progress.
So with the elephant in the room there, what is that terrible red, horrible F score that I see there?
That's based on how you're currently looking. So
what does that represent, that 42%?
So that's crunching, maybe easier to see here. So all these misses, so this you need to increase. That's increase, reduce. So it's crunching a score based on how perfectly optimized you are to the competitors that you put in.
Okay, cool.
So if you pulled out the competitors that look like they're moving the needle with their on page, and then you kind of put it in, a good score is probably somewhere around 80. That's probably going to get you where you need to be. What I found is that if you launch something at that range or so, obviously competition is a factor, but you're probably going to get to page 2, page 3 out of the gate just with your on page. Page 2, page 3, page 4, depending on how competitive things are. But so you can kind of go from not ranked to at least in the ballpark with your on page, kind of following these suggestions.
Great, excellent. Did you look at some of those other tabs that are there, like the adjustment by word count?
Sure. So what this is doing is it's looking at, all right, let's say sometimes you're stuck. You can't move off of this number. It's going to be 178, and that's just all there is to it. What this does is it then it alters the suggestions according to their word count. So it almost gives you more like a keyword density per signal evaluation when you can't get into this range. So, over here, like it might say you need 7 variations in your H1 or H2s, let's say, for example, and you can't do that because you're never going to get there. So you don't want to stuff all of that into one H2. Then it's going to reduce down what you should be doing based on this word count.
Good stuff.
The tag totals, I think we looked at, that's like, and these aren't taking optimization in consideration. This is just the total number of zones or the total number of tags that are on the pages. And then there's a competitors tab so you can kind of see who you're running up against. And again, these are the ones that you put in. The tool's not making any of those decisions for you. You're making those decisions on who your competitors are.
Nice. Well, I like it. I like this tool a lot. I just like the simplicity of it, and using it in conjunction with something like Cora, where it's way more robust. I think is a great way to do things for, especially for Onpage, primarily for Onpage. Um, does yours? It doesn't show any kind of backlink related
Not at the
information,
moment,
right?
no. That's kind of in the works, but that's not going to be anytime soon. We need to kind of hone this down, and then we'll kind of start making those, um, kind of adding those features in down the road. But at the
Okay.
moment, no. It's just all on page.
Okay. Cool. Well, let's switch back to camera view again.
Sure thing. And stop.
Um, One thing I was going to ask you about was your kind of top suggestion. Um, so you're doing this analysis. Is there something that you would recommend everybody should do as a number one priority? Something that continually shows good results for SEO, whether local or national. Something that kind of applies across the board.
Onpage is still the biggest mover. That's still the biggest thing. If you think about kind of driving a clutch, the better your on page is, the fewer links you need. That's just kind of how it works. The
Right.
more the more you know the on page, the better. On top of that, you can't rank a blank page with links. If you have a complete blank page and you can fire all the links you want at it, it's not going to rank for any term you want.
Oh, that's
And
cool. That's
even
something
if you,
you've tested.
yeah, so even if you're using exact match anchors, you can't get that blank page to rank. It actually has to have content on it. And what you understand is it's kind of a two-part process. Google first needs to understand what the page is about. That's relevance, and that's indexing. Then it needs to see if it's good content, the good content. But what that really means is the relevance is getting your keyword on the page in certain places. The rank part, or the good part, is how many times you're using your target keyword in those places. So the first one is just kind of getting it there. That gets you indexed. But then how many times you're using it in all those specific places, is what rank is. Something I think you could see is that the tool is identifying like these signals are over optimized and these signals are under optimized. I think that's a concept that a lot of people miss. Often they'll look at a page and say this page is over optimized or this page is under optimized, and it's highly unlikely that you'll have any page where every signal is over or under. What you'll find, most of the pages are both over and under optimized and over optimized at the same time,
Hmm.
because you need to look at individual signals, not the page as a whole.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. Good
and
point.
there's no SEO currency. Let's say you realize that you need one H2, you can't fix that with extra H3s.
Yeah.
You can't
Exactly.
you can't do a currency for signals. Each signal needs to be tweaked and optimized on its own. And so, what I try to do with my tool, and you can also see this in Cora too, is that it goes by signal. That you want to tweak and tune your signals according to what they need to be, not the page as a whole. So like that's where a lot of SEOs get frustrated. They're like, um, I think this is over optimized, so they start reducing keywords, but they just willy nilly from this signal, two from that. And then what they didn't realize is maybe some of those signals were over and now they're correct, but some of those ones that were correct are now under, and their page
Right.
doesn't perform the way they think it should.
I've seen sites where they don't have H1s for whatever reason. They just have their title tags, and Google will see that as an H1, so it'll interpret your title as your H1 rather than an actual H1. And then, of course, Google's already doing that where it'll pull content from your page instead of your meta description when it feels it's more suited to the search and that type of stuff. So I'm sure if you have your H1, that's going to outperform the title.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Or just like any kind of larger size font that you've got on the page that isn't an actual H tag. And I mean, you can still rank, and especially if you're overseas, you can have 9 H1s on a page and not get penalized for that. for whatever reason. I mean, so you don't have to do it. I guess the point is doing one thing wrong on a page isn't like, hey, how come these guys are ranking? It can certainly still happen. But when you're looking at what can we do the best, or how can we do this the best, you want to do it signal by signal.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we are running out of time here, so I really appreciate you coming on here, Kyle. Are you going to be at this coming White Hat versus Black Hat?
It depends on the date. I'm trying to get there. I have a couple.
He hasn't set a date yet, has he? He just said sometime in August.
August. So if it's beginning of August, I'm going to be in Europe
on
some things that are already planned. But if it's at the end of August, I think I can be there.
Okay, cool. Well, I hope to see you there. And anybody's welcome to come. Actually, I'll put a link. I'll put a link to the PageOptimizer Tool below this video, and then I'll also put a link to Quora, and I'll put a link to the White Hat versus Black Hat conference.
Yeah, and anybody using the tool, if you ever have any questions, feel free to ping me. That's totally cool. Happy to answer any and all questions.
Yeah, for sure. And do you want me to post your Skype address or something like that, or just...
That's fine. Yeah, people can Skype me.
They can look you up.
Also, like through the tool, there's a contact form. I answer that personally. So
okay, yeah, that's probably a better way to do it. So save you from being
completely harassed.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'm fairly certain that most of the internet has my contact information at this point, anyway.
Excellent.
So, all good.
Well, let's sign it off. Thank you guys for coming out. Those of you that are watching online, and those of you going to be watching after this live stream ends, feel free to write any questions. You can write them to me or to Kyle. You can ask even on this YouTube video, and I'll respond. Just so you know, I'm an SEO here located in Nanaimo, BC, with Arneeon Media. I do specialize in SEO and PPC. Very similar, but very different at the same time. My motto is, I'm lifting your spirits by raising your ranks. That's what our company does. We're also, our logo is a lion, but the name Arneeon is actually a Greek word which means lamb, interestingly. And it's back from my college days. I started a web design company called Arneeon. And then I just kind of built it into Arneeon Media as I got into SEO more and more. So we're turning lambs into lions online. There, that's how I bring it around, full circle.
I like it. I like it.
Right on. So thanks, Kyle. We will talk to you again soon. Maybe we'll do another interview once you've got your next release out there. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Any final words?
No, thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be on.
Right on. Have yourself a great day.
All right, take care.
Bye for now.